out of 10 out of 10 for wanting to stay with this guy. Man, sex with you for you guys must be really good. That's all I be saying. No, I'm just kidding. Let me think here. It sounds like it's a little bit hard to from what you said. It's a little bit hard to know exactly. He does have his charming moments. Yeah, of course. And no one's pure evil. So the last thing I want you to do is villainize this guy and say he's he's evil and he's terrible, and because the reality is in every relationship, both people have a part to play in why things don't work, right? So, and that's not to say that you're doing anything wrong. That's just to say that, both people have 50% of the issues in a relationship, and no one's pure evil and no one's pure good. And that's just the reality of a adult relationship, right? It's a little bit hard to know exactly what your guys' issue might be, because it could be a lot of things, right? This guy sounds definitely like he's probably emotionally immature. Even just the therapy stuff, part of it is a common thing for guys, right? I mean, most guys, with the exception of me, and this is after I've been in therapy for 10 years. So 10 years ago, I was probably like, therapy is for sissies. Now I'm a little bit different. It's been a long journey. But yeah, a lot of guys are just generally kind of emotionally unavailable and really don't believe in therapy and opening up and getting in touch with their feelings and that sort of thing. I get it. I've been there at one point in my life too. That's a little bit natural for guys, but emotional immaturity on the level we're talking about here is what it sounds like you're dealing with. This is not just a typical guy who doesn't like to talk about his feelings. It sounds like he's using alcohol to deal with his emotions. You can't really communicate with him. He's at the point where he's kind of going back to our signs, right? A lot of emotional outbursts and hostility to the point where it's physical. And I just want to say, Moon Girl, first of all, it sucks to hear that that's happening. I'm really going to encourage you, if you ever feel imminently unsafe, and I'm just going to throw this out here, call someone, call the police. There are domestic violence shelters out there, so I don't know if your financial situation is such that it would be hard to move away from this guy. But if you're ever in imminent danger from this guy, I want you to call someone, like, first and foremost. And I mean like the police. I mean like getting the hell out of there. Don't stay in a relationship where you're not physically unsafe. And if something is like actively happening, I get wanting to work it out, but if you're imminently unsafe, take care of yourself first and foremost. Left once, he tried to choke me. I didn't know what brought me back. Yeah. So, I mean, you're in a, I'm just going to be really real with you. You're in a domestic violence situation. I've seen it. I've worked with people in those situations. I've had family members in those situations. I've worked in case management, so I've dealt with people who have been living in DV shelters as a result of domestic violence. I've had family members who have stayed in DV shelters. So I totally get what it's like, and it sucks because I totally get how you could love someone and still be in a situation like that. Also, we have an ad break here, so I'm going to continue the video, and then when Moon Girl comes back, I will continue.
Yes, to be able to discuss it with you and work it through with you in a more emotionally mature way. So as much as we cannot control anybody else, we can manage ourselves better. That will, and often does, change the outcome of any number of situations.
And I want to, Moon Girl, I'm glad you're back. Sorry with the ads. Sometimes it's hard to tell when people are there or not there. And you're in your middle of giving someone like really personal advice. The ads drive me nuts sometimes. I think relationship advice is a really personal thing. It's my general standard for myself. that if I'm in a relationship where physical abuse is going on, I don't think that people should stay in it. I'm personally not going to stay in a relationship where I'm being physically abused. But you have to make that decision for yourself. If you really think that you can work things through this guy, I'm going to say you have a lot of work cut out for you. I'm going to give you 2 pieces of advice. So I think if this guy sounds highly emotionally immature and he's also abusive, if there's something that's keeping you in that relationship, not only is this guy probably got his personal work in terms of he's emotionally immature, he's abusive, and he's got a lot of work that he needs to do to be ready for a healthy relationship. I'm also, like I said before, there's 50% responsibility on both sides of the relationship. I think for you, my friend, I think you probably also struggle with some codependency issues. And I say that as a guy who's stuck in an abusive relationship myself. And I just love them. And I'm just like, if I just twist myself into a pretzel just right and say the right words, they'll love me and they'll stop abusing me and stonewalling me and yelling at me. And I've been there. Thankfully, I've never been in a relationship where I was physically abused, thank God. But I mean, I'm also a guy, so that it happens less. But I would say if he's unwilling to go to therapy with you, and if he's at the point where he's doing the stuff that he's doing, he needs intense therapy to be ready for a healthy relationship with anybody, not just you. And don't blame yourself for the way he's acting. This is his work that he needs to do. But also, if you're staying with this guy, it probably is a trauma bond, realistically. I'm going to tell you that. And the reason why you're probably still staying, even knowing that, is probably because you really struggle with some codependency issues. Again, that's like literally the shit that I specialize in, because that's what I've spent years overcoming myself. So, and by all means, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out to me if you want to join the Discord server, you can feel free to reach out to me on Discord. We can talk about it. If you want to reach out to me on my Instagram, we can totally talk about it. Recovering from codependency is really hard, and rescuing a dying relationship, especially when it's abusive, is really hard. And how do you start working on that? You start by working on your relationship with yourself. If you value yourself and you really love yourself, then you're going to feel okay with setting standards. And you're going to let those people either rise to meet your standard, or it's not going to work out for them, right? And you have to be really able to get to that place. A lot of times people with deep down feelings of not being lovable, deep down feelings of shame, low self-esteem, low self-worth, those are the type of people who end up in dysfunctional, abusive relationships. I know because I've been there. I've had to do a lot of work to get to a point where I have a healthy relationship with myself and can really love myself. So, yeah, you got to really start working. And it's not an overnight process. It's going to take time. So I would say if you really want to, and thankfully we still got our video talking about ways that you might be able to interact with this guy. But I'm going to say with this is extreme as things are with you guys, I'm going to say this one video is not going to cut it for you. You need like a whole plan, because I don't want you to have to stay in a relationship where you're abused. That sucks. Ultimately, I think you need to work on your codependency issues. Maybe there's some, way that you could talk to the guy that he'd be a little bit more amenable to, but I also think he has a lot of stuff that he needs to work on. And I think you guys need to take really drastic action if you want to save this thing. Again, you feel more than free to reach out to me, because there's a lot of stuff. This guy could actually be a narcissist. He could actually be, have some kind of personality disorder. I don't know from the stuff that you've told me. Certainly it sounds like he's emotionally unavailable. And also, my dear, it certainly sounds like you're codependent. I know because I've been there. So definitely been feeling nihilistic. Yeah, and it can suck. Thank you for the sub. That's very nice of you. I'm happy that I could help. Been thinking my mental health is far from loving myself. Been feeling nihilistic. Yeah. No, I totally get it. Yeah. So don't give up. The first thing that I want to tell you is that absolutely can get better. I am a living, breathing testament. Me and my buddy Flame here, who hangs out all the time. I don't know if he's here, if he's in the chat earlier. You know, most of us in this community have gone through a lot of freaking trauma. Most of us have struggled with feeling unworthy, unlovable, like we'll never be enough. And we're all in this community doing the work to get to a point where we can love ourselves. And in having a healthy relationship with ourselves, we can have a healthy relationship with others. So it's a journey. It's a process. There's a lot of things you got to heal, but you're in the right spot for it. So welcome in. I hope you stick around, and I hope my advice has been helpful. Be a place to heal. It's an admirable goal, I'd say. Yeah. That's why it's called a place to heal, guys. Come on now. Thank you, Flame. Me and Flame are buds. He's an awesome guy. So let's wrap up this video here, and maybe at the very least you can get some ideas of things that you could do with this guy.
We're gonna get it.
By all means, feel free to let me. Thank you for subbing. Of course, you're more than welcome to also join the Discord where we hang out in there. I post mental health stuff all the time. You can follow my Instagram if you're interested in it. I post all sorts of stuff on mental health, relationships, and healing from codependency. So probably stuff that's right up your alley. Yeah, like I said, I do this stuff. It's my passion. So it's really stuff that I've had to overcome and turn around, and now I want to help other people overcome it too. So you're in the right spot.
Into that. But first, if you're new here, welcome to our incredible little corner on the internet. Take a second, introduce yourself in the comment section below. If you're back again, always good to have you. Special shout out to my shifters. Really glad you're here. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, the button's about right down there. If you could like the video, if you get something out of it, that would be amazing. And either way, my name is Julia Christina, and I'm a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a coach, and a speaker. I'm the creator of my membership community, the Shift Society, where we are taking
I love her
this work
content, by the way. She's awesome.
Level, being
Feel free to
guided,
drop her a follow
and helped the entire
or sub to her
way
on YouTube.
Through.
She's great.
You can get more information about the Shift Society in the description below. I help heart-centered humans break through the crap that is holding them back so that they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And being in a relationship with someone who is emotionally immature can be really crappy. And it can feel even more crappy when we don't know what to do about it, or to switch things around and create a different dynamic in the relationship, and hopefully create more of an emotionally mature relationship on both people's sides. So what do? The first thing to do if you are in a relationship with an emotionally immature person and you're frustrated by it, you're overwhelmed by it, you're angry about it, maybe even it's creating some resentment, take a step back and really look at the bigger picture. What types of things are they immature about? Is it everything?
That's a great point.
Or is it just certain things that you both keep getting tripped up on? Understanding that, of course, all of us have.
And she brings up a good point. I also want to bring up another thing too. When you're in these situations where you're trying to talk to an emotionally immature person, a lot of times the way that we go about engaging in discussing the issues can be more or less helpful. So I know one thing that I have been guilty of when I've been in relationships that I've really had to work on is when you're dealing with an emotionally immature person, or just generally someone who's a stubborn pain in the ass and talking to them feels like a brick wall. We've all been there, I'm sure. It's easy to get exhausted and just irritated with these people, and when you do, it's so natural to start to be critical, right? Of like just being passive aggressive and like, oh, I wish you would just take out the dishes for once. Oh, you never do this, you never do that. And again, like we've talked about, because emotionally immature people, these types of people, tend to really struggle deep down with a lot of core insecurity and feelings of shame. You tend to make their defensiveness and immaturity even worse when you try to have conversations with them and you kind of lead off with criticism. So she'll probably bring it up here in a second, but one really helpful thing that we can do is really try to keep the focus on our behavior. We've talked a little bit about nonviolent communication here. Shameless plug here. Moon Girl, I don't want you to go read this book and think that you can change the world, but I'm going to say this book because I love it. Nonviolent Communication. Because I don't think just reading this book will be enough in your case. But nonviolent communication. It's a great book. There's an entire center for nonviolent communication. I would love to. I'm not currently certified in it, but I would love to get certified in it. Really working on bringing up your criticisms to the other person. Again, romantic, family, friend, whatever. Focusing on I statements. So I felt upset when you didn't take out the trash when you said you would. In the future, what I really need is to feel like I can rely on you when I ask for something. If we word things like that, even if someone is emotionally immature, they tend to be more receptive than if we're like, oh, why don't you just take out the damn garbage already? You said you were going to do it tomorrow, right? So communication and the way, again, we can't change the emotionally immature person. They have to want to change themselves, but we can change the way that we show up with the person. If they're really, really bad, they're really far gone, then even us just showing up using really healthy communication might not be enough. I've been in those. I've been in those relationships where no matter how healthfully I communicated with this person, they just shut me down and stonewalled me. There's not a lot you can do in that case. But sometimes if a person's just a little bit of a pain in the butt, if we try to word our criticisms in a way that's a little bit more focused on us, we use I statements rather than you statements, right? Nonviolent communication, in other words, then it can go a long way. So that's one helpful tip here. Try to phrase things with how they made me feel. He usually reacts to that by saying I'm being overly sensitive. Yeah. I mean, yeah. And that's also from everything you said about this guy, he sounds like he's probably avoidantly attached. He's definitely emotionally immature. Sounds like he's avoidantly attached. I wouldn't go so far as to say he sounds like he's got a personality disorder or anything. He may, though. I mean, I will never make that claim on someone without knowing a lot of detail, so I'm definitely not going to say that. But yeah, to your point, Moon Girl, sometimes even if we do, again, relationships are a two-way street. There's 50% accountability on both sides. But sometimes, even if we own all 100% of our 50% of this responsibility in the relationship, it's still not enough. Because the other person has to want to step up to do their part too, right? If he's an ass, and no matter how kind, no matter how well you communicate, he's still an ass, there's only so much you can do. So I do think you can try to focus on using I statements and talk about how you feel. But if he's not willing to step up the plate and he's still stonewalling you, he's still defensive, he's still angry at you, even when you do that, and I've been there, there's not much you can do.
Weaknesses and imperfections, and we don't always handle everything in the most emotionally mature way.
Yeah.
And sometimes we are
sometimes we
reactive
ourselves are reactive,
or
right?
explosive, or get angry in certain situations and at certain times, maybe depending on what else we have going on in our lives. But when this is something that is happening repeatedly and frequently about several issues, and you don't seem to be able to make any headway on any of it, then it is cause for concern.
That's an excellent point too. Sometimes people are really sensitive about just one thing. Like, I'm trying to make a joke about myself, but I can't think of anything good. If you talk to me about my Apex ability, y'all, because y'all see me be playing Apex sometimes. We might play some Apex later tonight. We'll see. I'm gonna be no, even that I won't be defensive about. I'm defensive about nothing. I'm pretty easygoing and take criticism pretty well. But some people have things that they're really, really insecure about, right? Like maybe it's your looks, or I have some stuff about, and looks seems to be a thing that everyone's got at least something that they're unhappy about, right? Some people are insecure about just some things. They might have a sore spot, But again, she brings up a great point that a mark of emotional immaturity is often someone who's just insecure about, or not insecure, but they're defensive and reactive about everything. There's nothing that you can talk to them about where they don't get defensive, aggressive, stonewall you, blame shift you, point the finger at you. That's a pretty good sign that it's emotional immaturity, not just they have this one little insecurity.
But again, if it is just an isolated bad moment, if it is one or two things that you both keep getting stuck on, then it's not everything. And maybe you need to come back to those couple things and address them in a different way, which you're going to learn about in just a second here.
Yeah.
But really just sussing out, is it everything or is it just a couple things? And maybe what is going on underneath the surface for these couple things that we keep having issues or conflict or upset about. The next one is, don't be afraid of addressing the person's behavior and bringing up when they have done something that doesn't feel good or that doesn't feel right or that's giving you cause for upset or concern. Now, how we communicate is going to make all the difference here. And one thing that I teach a lot of is how to communicate in a clean, clear, and classy way.
Yeah.
One of those things involves using your I statements and being able to take full responsibility for your own.
Exactly, like we talked about, right? And again, even sometimes doing that's not enough, because if the person's really, really bad, kind of like Moon Girl just mentioned, sometimes even that's enough. But we can give ourselves a fighting chance to let a healthy relationship thrive and flourish if we can word our criticisms as I statements, right? If we can communicate in that type of way, as opposed to being reactive, blame shifting, being aggressive ourselves, right? We can't control what the other person does, but we can control how we show up. And if we conduct ourselves really well, then we can invite the other person to show up as their best self too, right? They might not. They might choose to be an asshole, but we give ourselves the best fighting chance if we do that.
Experience, not saying, when you do this, I feel like this, saying, I feel this way, and this comes up for me when you do this or say this. It is a very slight difference, but it goes from blaming them and pointing fingers at them to saying, hey, this is what comes up for me when you say this, when you do this, when you act like this, when you don't do this, whatever that is. This is how I feel. This is how it impacts me, and being able to own that. Now, I have an entire course on clean, clear, classy, and confident communication called Speak and Feel Heard, and that is going to teach you several steps and several methods for becoming a rock star communicator that is able to get the outcome that they want, to be able to collaborate and bring people into conversation. All of that is in Speak and Feel Heard. You can get that at relationships need.
There's a lot of ads and her things, but yeah, there's a lot of great resources out there for improving your communication. Let's say my mastering relationships course is going to be launching here in a couple weeks. So shameless plug for me too. I can plug things too, lady.
Just shoving it down, pushing it aside, shoving it under the rug creates bitter and resentment. And in the words of Dr. John Gottman, who is a psychologist and one of the leading relationship experts of our time,
I love John Gottman.
He says that resentment in a relationship is poison. And once enough resentment has been built, it is almost impossible to recover from it. So protecting your relationship from resentment comes with being able to talk about things, to bring things up, to address issues. So it's not going to be everything, but it's also not going to be nothing. It's some.
And that's I see an oof in the chat. Does that hit? I know I felt like that in my soul when she said that too. That's the worst thing about being in a relationship with someone who's emotionally immature. And Moon Girl, if this vibes with you, then by all means share your experience too. I know I've been in relationships where no matter how hard I communicate with the person, they were going to be defensive, reactive asses. They were going to stonewall because they were emotionally immature, right? I realize that now. I didn't realize that back then, but now I realize it. Truly, the thing that kills that relationship is not that person being an ass. It's how much resentment builds up in us that then slowly poisons the relationship. And I know, I got to the point where I just had to leave that thing because it was just so toxic. And the resentment is there. Yeah, I mean, that's the calling card, right? You know that you're in a toxic, dysfunctional relationship. Typically with an emotionally immature person, when you just feel that resentment there just all the time of like, and it's hard because we want to speak up about our needs. We want to be able to state our boundaries and feel like they'll be respected. But unfortunately, with emotionally immature person, that just falls on deaf ears, right? So, going to lurk mode for a bit. Got some things to do. Yeah, no worry, Flame. You're good, my friend. Yeah, this is shout out to Flame over here. He's been. I just want to build my buddy Flame up for a second here. He's been in a relationship for 13 years, has a wife and kids, super healthy. Man, I just think it's awesome to see people in healthy relationships nowadays. Because, yeah, I'll tell you, I've been in this exact situation where just in a relationship with someone that no matter how well I communicated, it just fell on deaf ears, and you just get angry and you get bitter and resentful towards that person over time. And not only does their toxicity poison the relationship, but then your resentment towards their toxicity also poisons the relationship, you know? Sometimes they'll seem upset and be passive aggressive, then he just keeps telling me everything is fine in an angry tone. Yeah, I mean, he's not a good communicator, right? So ultimately, he's acting like I'm crazy for asking if he's upset. Yeah. And, you know, Moon Girl, from what you're saying, I think, and you haven't told me the whole story yet, you know, there's still a lot of questions that I would ask. But it sounds like, if I had to guess, he's probably got a lot of symptoms of emotional immaturity. You probably have a lot of symptoms of codependency, and there's a lot of, that's a whole dynamic that comes in play that we could talk about one day. And he's speaking in terms of attachment styles. So attachment styles are like, we grow up being raised by our parents or primary caregivers in the way they... Whew, that was loud. Brian RSA, welcome in. Yo, what's up, Alpha Gamer? How's it going? Man, it's popping tonight, dude. We talking about stubborn pain in the ass people, and everyone shows up because everyone's got one in their life. But anyway, back to analyzing Moon Girl's relationship over here. Attachment styles. We've had streams on this before, so feel free to check out the replay. I've also got some stuff on it on my Instagram too that you can check out. In a nutshell, the way our primary caregivers raised us, if they were really consistently available for us, we developed like a healthy attachment to them. And then we grow up and we model healthy attachments with other people. Now, if they weren't available for us, we develop what's called an insecure attachment style. And so there are 4 different types of attachment styles. This is a whole thing we spent many hours talking about on stream before. So this is the Cliff Notes version. If I had to guess, I'd say your boyfriend, who sounds like he's got a lot of work to do to be in a healthy relationship with anyone, not just you. Sounds like he's an emotionally immature person. Sounds like you're struggling with codependency. Sounds like he's probably avoidant, probably specifically dismissive avoidant. He could be a fearful avoidant, but I'm going to bank my money on dismissive avoidant. And you're probably anxiously attached, if I had to go with that. So that's a whole... You're drunk and you're watching